Hey everyone, welcome to my studio. Well, this is not my studio. This is actually the workspace of Oneka Small, fellow COVID-19 Technical Assistance Grant recipient. I'm here today to discuss my COVID-19 sculpture with Oneka, as I thought it would be more interesting than just me telling you about it.
So over the last couple of weeks, I have been privileged to seeing this, what I believe is a really beautiful sculpture unfold.
Thank you very much.
And last video that I saw, and it's been labeled the COVID-19 sculpture, I keep wondering, why do you call it the COVID-19 sculpture?
It's just a practical name, it's a temporary working name of sorts.
Okay.
It's interesting that you asked me that because as I will discuss later as we get into the discussion, I don't really know what the piece will look like really, or the name, till I'm very far along in the development. But after this last stage where I finished the head, where I was able to capture the expression that I wanted, the name of the piece is Unapologetic.
Unapologetic. It seems a very apt name. But I find it interesting that you don't know the name of the piece until you're finished, because from what I've seen and in your process, it's very much detailed, very much thought through. So even when you talk about your base in some of the videos and what you represent in the base, it seems as though you've thought very much about it so that you'd almost, to me, know the name of it before it's finished. But I can kind of understand that. You want to maybe explain a little bit?
Well, my process, to define my process would be I would call it design by intuition. Like when I decided to do this particular sculpture, I wanted to do a piece obviously on my COVID experience, and more so what I saw females going through, well, their COVID experience from my perspective, because basically that's all I can say from. And the key principle or theme that came to me was between a rock and a hard place, right? And I wanted to represent that. So all I knew at the beginning of this process was I felt that women were between a rock and a hard place.
Can you tell me some of the stories, or maybe one or two stories that made you think that women are between a rock and a hard place? Because if you see us walking around, we look beautiful.
It's true.
But you probably have a deeper insight into some, like what's really happening behind that everyday mask that we put on.
What moved me was some of the challenges they faced. Like as a lockdown was what you would call it, we came out of lockdown. There was a new normal where working women, some women lost their jobs, some women got reduced time, some women had to work from home while managing children, some women had to go and collect the children half day, although they were working a full-time job, and then they still had to, they still had to look and act like women, and it was very difficult. But they did it. They succeeded, and I was very impressed to see how they dealt with it. And I mean, I heard stories from like my family, my sister. I heard stories from you. I heard stories from my other friends, and these were women from different, I don't know if you want to say social strata, different
socioeconomic backgrounds.
Yes, socioeconomic backgrounds and different jobs and careers, and they all faced the same challenge, and they got through. They were able to overcome these things with the typical grace that you would expect from black women.
We're so happy that you're representing for us, Jason, because you do it with such a delicacy and a gentleness. So unapologetic, that's the name of the sculpture, and that's what I will be calling her from now on. She stands, even though she is between this rock and this hard place, she stands, majestic and unapologetic and beautiful in her Africanness to me. So that's fairly amazing. So thank you, Jason. Because one of the things, I have a friend and she was saying that the pandemic was pushing the feminist movement back decades.
Mm-hmm.
And which is the same thing that you're basically saying, that, you know, even though there might be a male and a female in the household, it is still looked to the woman to take the child to school, maybe even have the child in the car while they're at work because they don't have anything else to do with it, and kind of keep contact through the window. So we've been put in a lot of very strange positions. So yes, that. One of the nice things I saw and I really enjoy about this sculpture, and it seems kind of basic, is this hair. Mm-hmm. Like, can you tell me a little bit about the hairstyle? And I know that you're very, that you do things very methodically. Mm-hmm. So why did you choose that particular hairstyle? Was this, I know in the video you said this was a new thing for you, that you've never done this type of hairstyling before. Mm-hmm. So you want to say a little bit about that?
Sure. I basically was inspired by, again, the COVID reality, where women not being able to go to the hairdresser, a lot of them reverted to natural hairstyles. And I saw my daughter with this thing. She would plait the hair and then she would undo it, and she called it something like a twist out or something. But it looked really good. I really love the style. Mm-hmm. And then she would get the hair trimmed, but the hair would be natural. And I wanted to imitate that. Now, I would do an Afro style, which has one particular method, but a twist out now, you can almost see the individual plait still, although the hair is unplaited. So how I was going to achieve that would be a challenge, because when you have deep cavities, when you're making the mold, it gets into the cavities and it kind of locks the clay in place. So I'm not sure how it would turn out, but I think I have an idea, and I will have to do some manipulation with the mold and like cut off little bits to make sure it doesn't lock, but I can still keep the overall texture. So I will have to pay a lot of attention to the mold when I make it, but I think I should be able to complete it. So the next video with the mold should be fairly interesting.
I am looking forward to it. What I find also interesting is your use of materials. So far we've been privileged to a couple videos, and we've seen wood, metal, cement, clay. Well, how I like it. I like the mix of the materials, but can you maybe explain why you're using different types of materials, and maybe if the materials are symbolic or if they're just practical?
It's a bit of both. It first starts with a practical kind of necessity, because traditional sculpting materials are expensive. Traditional sculpting processes are expensive. So over the years, I've developed techniques to reduce costs but still deliver the kind of effect, the kind of rendering that I would want. And cement is one of these mediums I can use to produce, the similar effect I would want. And yes, you can make a mold, but the mold itself is expensive as well, the mold making materials. So what I've done is, I didn't develop this technique. If you go online, you can see, like especially in India and other developing countries, I guess because of the same reason, they do direct modeling, direct rendering with the cement as well.
So your body is what you call direct rendering with cement,
right?
And then the head or the bust is the mold that you're going to cast.
I would make a mold of the head, because the head captures a lot of the expression and the detail. I could do render the head directly as well, but it would take longer, because I would have to build the thing very carefully to get it formed. So I would be layering the cement and then rubbing it, shaping it. So I'll be using like a wet method and a dry method. But so it's just easier. And because the head is smaller, I can afford to make a mold of the head.
Understood. And then if the last thing you do, I assume, because we haven't seen the development of the hands as yet. So what are the hands going to be made out of? They're going to be cement, or are they clay, or do you, or as you said, this is an intuitive sort of process. So as you're working along, you say, okay, well, let me do the hands in cement, or let me do the hands in clay and cast them, because the hands are also very detailed. So does it matter, like, if how detailed you're going to be determines the materials that you're going to use?
Yes, but in this case, the hands are, I've left the hands for last because it's a practical reason. The sculpture is fairly complex because of the position. As I work with it, I have to remove it. I have to make a mold of the head, so I have to pick it apart all the time. So I leave the hands out because the hands will be on the board. So if I constantly move it, the hands might be damaged. So you will see me render the hands after the head is done, is attached to the body, and then I attach the body to the base where I know it's not going to be coming off anymore. So basically the last thing I probably would be rendering or sculpting on this piece will be the hands for that particular reason.
The word calculated keeps coming to mind, but I know that's not the word that I want to use, because calculated has a negative overtone or connotations. But I always say that you're a purist, but there's so much process in what you do and making sure that each step is followed to come up with the particular outcome that you want. Has this sculpture, Unapologetic, lived up to the vision that you had in your head? And what was that? I know it was about the rock and the hard place, but how are you feeling about it living up to what you're seeing in your head? Because it's not always easy to translate what you have in your mind into reality. So
I think it was successful in this instance. My intuition is not always on. Sometimes I miss.
You want to tell people?
It's true, because as an artist,
exactly not your intuition yet, because
as an artist, we hit and miss.
Your intuition cannot be a miss. You might say that your intuition did not garner the results that someone else may have thought. But I can't see how your intuition is a miss.
Yeah, I miss a lot. You might not see the piece. That piece might be the bang, right? But in this instance, it was very successful.
Is it the intuition or the technical that misses?
There's no difference between the two.
There's no difference.
Technical and material, use of materials is very integral to what I do, because the technical aspect of the materials allow me to express my vision. Right? So in this instance, it worked well because I wanted to highlight the rock and the hard place, but it's not a hard thing. It's not like pressure in a sense. It's more of balance. So if you notice, she's kind of balancing the two panels, trying not to touch them in a way, but still trying to be proud. You understand?
Yeah.
And so that's why it went, and I think it was successful even from the time I made the little maquette where it had just wire frame. I could see, well, this thing was going to work.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about the base, because I think in one of the videos you talked about the concept behind the base.
Yeah.
And that's, we don't always think of the base being an integral part of the actual artwork. You think you're going to do the artwork and put it on the base. But it was very interesting that this base was very much a part of it. So,
well, the base for me defined the concept. So the base set the parameters. So she exists within the space created by the base. And what's interesting is, from a COVID perspective, there's so much uncertainty with COVID. So the base, I made the bottom part of the base to imitate a grate, like in the road,
right,
where you can see through it. It feels like you're going to fall through, but you don't, in a sense.
Things that you step over.
Yes. So there's a lot that the base the bottom part of the base captures the uncertainty of COVID, but the fact that she rests upon it and rises above it, in a sense, shows how she's able to cope with that uncertainty.
One of the discussions that I've had is that COVID is an imitation. It's just a continuation of life. It is a continuation of how we exist, maybe on steroids, but it's a continuation.
Agreed.
Would you say, from your conversations with women, having a daughter, mother, auntie, wife, that this is an ongoing thing, that you feel a sense for women? Because for me, sometimes I feel like I've always had to balance these things. COVID, yes, made it worse, but there was always this not feeling of a rock and a hard place. What's your sense of that?
I totally agree with that, and it comes out in my work. There was a piece I did years ago, I think it's in Sidetrack now, All in Straight, and it was basically about the same thing. It was looking at slavery, where I had read this paper by Sir Hilary, I believe, and another co-author. I think she was from Jamaica, I can't remember the name. But what it discussed was, I believe, the fact that women were not valued as much as men as slaves. So they had to find a way to make themselves valuable to the master. And what they did, they used their feminine wills, I guess, and their creativity to make themselves valuable, and they integrated themselves into the household, into master's life, made sure they got children in order to create some sort of connection and value. And what it was an ingenious way of coping with the reality they were in. And in many cases, they actually went on to have fair amounts of power and influence, even though they were slaves, even more so than men. And I think that was seen in even Barbados and things, Antigua and some other. I may be wrong, but I can remember from the paper. So that inspired me to do a piece where the woman was balancing work, and she was pregnant at the time. So she balanced all of these things.
And I'm thinking about your other work, and there's always, well, not always, but in quite a few of them, there's this mix of materials, and that's nice. So we see you as a very mixed media artist.
Yes.
When you're doing your creative work, like self-generated thoughts and that kind of stuff, your bust me, very. My other question is, and I saw you working on a video, not on video, I saw you working on a sculpture, but what's your reference image for the head? Like, who is it? Is it a person that you know? Is it out of your imagination? I didn't see a screen with an image or anything. So you're sculpting from the head, from your imagination?
Technically, no. Yes and no, I'd say. The dimensions, the basic dimensions of what we call the underlying structure, which is the skull, are actually the dimensions from my daughter's head, right? Unfortunately, she becomes my guinea pig because she's there. She's free. Yeah. So it's like, come here and measure. But in this instance, she fit. She just fit. Her proportions were correct. What I did then was I got some images on the internet. So I'm just looking for a particular look, particular features that I want to emphasize. Like in this instance, you notice that I would have emphasized very thick lips and a very African kind of nose, and the eyes, very large kind of eyes, which would, I believe, form the expression that I would want.
What's the expression? I know what I feel when I see her, but it just seems so hard to sculpt in that expression because it's very, the word escapes me. But tell me, what is the expression you were going for? Like what do you want people to feel when we see her?
Like strength, quiet strength, not strength in the sense like,
Shiva.
Yeah, kind of. That's a good, but the quiet kind of strength that you see in what I've seen in black women. This, I mean, you don't have to make a lot of noise. It's just there. It's just like an energy that comes out.
It's true.
Right.
It's true. I know you can edit this out, but it's the strength I see in your mother. You understand that beauty, but that assuredness. And it's a beautiful sculpture, that unapologetic sculpture.
Thank you. I'm glad that you saw, that you would have seen my mother, because my mother was a very strong influence in my work, you would understand my mother's the first kind of inspiration that would make me, drew my attention to the female and strong females. So, what were we saying? I can't remember what we were saying.
You were talking about the strength and that
Oh,
your
yes.
mother was
For
that
sure.
embodies that black woman, that unapologetic,
Exactly.
beautiful, strong,
Stylish.
like that twist out's happening even if I get crushed today.
Oh, yeah.
I coming out and nobody's gonna know that I just juggled 20 million things
Exactly.
to come out looking good.
Yes.
Right, okay. Are there any other women in your
Yeah,
your
you would
life?
want to ask that, Oneka. And
Any other women in your life that influence your work?
of course, Oneka, you know for well. But anyhow, let me have that discussion,
No,
shall
we're
we?
not having
Let's
we're
have
not
that
having
discussion.
a particular discussion
No, we're
about
not.
particular
No.
women.
I know we're not going to have a
We're having-
particular discussion. What I'm speaking about here is the fact that women have always influenced and inspired me.
Yeah.
I can call some names; it's not a problem.
You don't need to call me.
No, I call it some names.
You could even, I feel you can call sculptures. You have, just to show some of your beautiful women sculptures, you have Trapped,
Yes.
you have Upon Reflection,
Mm-hmm.
you have Beautiful and
Unspoiled.
Unspoiled. Those three come straight to mind.
Correct.
And even the piece that Adrian Alcock has, what's the name of it? And she's teaching.
Well, that's my
Woman is-
mother. That's actually my mother.
That's your mother. So
Yeah.
the woman is teaching. So like even in that where you're incorporating other elements, the women are always beautiful, unapologetic,
and unspoiled.
and unspoiled.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So women have always influenced me. Looking at it from I guess you would call it a spiritual thing. I was always curious about creation, and I was wondered like whether the scientists were correct or whether Christianity was correct, and that kind of narrowed down into I looked at God's creations, and one of the most amazing creations God made was woman. In
Did
terms
you hear
of
that?
design,
Did you hear that?
in terms of design, when I say design, please bear with me, I mean form, the way everything, this is not objective, this is purely from an artistic point of view, lines and form. And then you combine the way women move, speak, so they have all these elements, and then there's like this, I don't know, life or spirit or whatever, the way they move, they talk. I was always curious as to how that works, and to represent it. I always wanted to represent it in some way. I was always inspired by particular women. It's very small. And this is not in a sexual way, of course. I just would see a woman walking down the street, and it would be like amazing. And I guess it's tied to me having a stigmatism, so I can't see details. So I can see movement, lines, like just general outlines, and the way they move was always, fascinating.
Well, you do a marvelous job capturing our beauty.
Thank you very
We
much.
thank you and we encourage you on. I almost sometimes think a lot of females don't actually address the beauty of females in their work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always great to have a man address the beauty and our strength and our struggles during COVID.
Thank you.
Because the struggles are real. Because COVID continues.
It definitely.
It definitely does. Is there anything else you would like to touch upon with this piece?
I would have mentioned the intuitive design. I would just like to mention that the design is not finished as yet.
Right.
At this point, I'm certain of the name, I'm certain of what we want the piece to say completely. But the final way she says it, has not yet been determined. I think they would have spoken to you about this, where how I'm going to the apparel I'm going to use, how I'm going to dress her.
Yeah.
Now, the current thing, because the video is going to be on YouTube, I can't it's not a nude. I can't use a nude in this instance. So I'm trying to figure out what to put on her, and I'm thinking that, okay, mention a mask, for what do you call that? A blouse? Make a mask with blouse.
You want to make a blouse mask?
Yeah, so I can.
So the top.
The top, yes, the top.
The top.
These terms.
The top will be a mask.
Yeah,
that's
like literally be a mask. I'm thinking I'm going with that because it works. It works with both.
It does.
It solves the problem of the YouTube not, blacklisting the video, but it also speaks to the fact that mask has become part of our apparel and day-to-day wear.
But I think it also, for me, it cements that concept of almost like treading water, all these things happening underneath, but you're still looking. So there's a mask when we step out, generally
Exactly.
speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only today when you're talking about not being naked. We don't generally walk around naked, like as women. So if
Yeah.
so so it actually makes sense to put clothes on her. I know one of the discussions that we had also was about size.
Yes.
I think that's a very interesting discussion. I know it's not totally relevant to the concept,
Mm-hmm.
but have you thought about a particular, I know you're talking about the clothes, but a particular size of woman?
I was going to go with a not plus size, but I would say
Full body.
Full body. That's the term. I like having a woman to give me these terms. So
Exactly.
I feel more comfortable.
So you don't get no.
So yes, full bodied woman. However, because the base was made, I'm now confined to that particular proportion.
Right.
But what I can tell you is that she will be a bit more mature than normal. So she will not necessarily be a young lady per se. She'll be a lady with some experience. Let's put it that way.
Is that a feature, are those features that you sculpt in? Because right now she's beautiful. Like, I don't look at her and I don't see an age for some reason. She seems a little young because her skin looks really good.
Yeah.
And like nothing's sagging. So so when you think, then as you progress this piece, would you change characteristics on her face by putting in certain details?
I would add age by the body. I would use the body at first. So there's a difference as females age, the body changes somewhat. But as everybody ages, the body changes somewhat.
But it's particularly so for females.
Yes, I
I've
don't
been led to understand.
Yeah, that's what I personally don't see anything wrong with it, but I think aging is a natural thing.
Of course.
Right. So I don't see it as there's one particular standard. I think there's a 20-year-old standard, there's a 25-year-old standard, there's a 35-year-old, etc.
Correct.
So, and even then, I think it's an individual thing as well. Because there's some women who at 70 look like 45.
Exactly.
And then some women who at 45 look like
65.
So,
and it's just how you are.
Exactly. And so, I tend to look at women from a blinder point of view. If I'm looking at one woman, I look at one woman. I don't look at one woman and compare her to another.
You assess based on that particular individual.
Yeah, remember I look at qualities like the form, shape, movement. That's why I've always been drawn to dancers. Yeah, I love dancing and watching women dance. It's obviously African dancing and stuff, but I like modern and the other dancing.
You just like to watch the movement.
Yeah.
Which is what you said before. Like you like to watch. You're mesmerized by.
Strong word, but yeah. Let me go.
There you go,
mesmerized.
By the movement of women, and because You could edit it out. I just have to ask. Is there a particular... Are there any women that move you? That you don't have to name names, but like, is there a feeling or a flow that you get from any woman in particular? How does that translate?
That was inevitable. It's inevitable you would have asked me that question.
Because you tell me don't ask it.
And
so
it's inevitable
it.
that it would have happened naturally. If the female form and the female movement is a part of your main subject matter, it's understood that you would find exceptional examples of this.
Understood.
Right. So I do have an exceptional example of this that I find is very subjective, obviously.
Of course.
That I find inspiring. So to answer your question is yes.
Good.
Anything else you want to push?
No.
Good. I'm glad because I wasn't going to tell you. I wasn't going to say any of. No.
Okay. Anything else we need to touch upon?
I don't think I need to mention anything else at this point.
Oh, there was something else I wanted to ask, and I know you said it's not finished, but it was about the finishes. So I've seen that you use different finishes on different sculptures. Like in my head, Little Boy.
Yes.
What was that one called?
I can't remember.
I know I keep calling it Muse, but I know it was.
But it was given a new name by the owner.
It was given a
new name by the owner, so
like,
that's why I forgot, because it's like I call it one thing and then
it wasn't called Looking Up.
No.
Okay.
I love God, aim high, keep pure, which is my primary school motto.
God, aim high, keep pure.
Right.
So there's a particular finish on that. We
Yeah.
would have seen a different finish maybe on Trapped, a different one on Upon Reflection. So your finishes are determined by the concept, the execution of the concept at that point in time. Explain how your finishes come about.
Purely intuitive. I have no idea what you think will look like in the end. I made the piece. Yes, I have an ultimate impression of sorts, a feeling that I want, but visually I can't see it. And that's what the finish does. The finish brings that vision into focus for me. So I have no idea what it would do, which is not good because I can't remember the method I used to create the finish for Trapped. I can't remember the method I used.
What Jason would like to say is, going forward, I will be keeping wonderful documentation on my process so that I will be able to replicate finishes.
It's true. I am especially grateful to the National Cultural Foundation for granting me this grant. This grant has allowed me to see my process and to be critical. Look at it from a critical point of view and recognize that while intuition is a major part of what I do, I still need to document it to grow. So I'm really, really grateful because this grant allowed me to as I'm recording myself and watching myself, I'm able to see the areas I need to work on, and one of them is improving the records I take. And I realized that I can still be intuitive because I just reference the records. I just use the records in the future, but the records don't confine me or control me. That was my fear previously, but I've come to realize that it doesn't. It is just a record.
Nice.
Thank you.
Any final words? Like just to basically wrap it up, or anything that you might...
What would I like to say? I can't think of anything else. I'm just really excited with the piece. I'm really excited at the response I've gotten just from the photos and I really appreciate the support that.
You want to repeat that? Because we go crash, 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 crash.
It's true.
Swing, wing, wing.
Listen, what? That's a whole discussion itself, right? Like, where that come from?
You didn't see the video?
Yeah, no.
You didn't see the video? Oh, shoot.
Because they try to say pashing wing. I know it's pashing. But it was small.
You would say pashing.
Yeah, then it was small. It's pashing, pashing. But he said pashing. So I'm like, what kind of gun you using? That's not a 45. He used like a 22. That's gonna be like.
This thing on like universal, but I saw one of my feet. John Doe. His name is John Doe. John Doe is one of my WhatsApp people, right?
Yeah.
So he posted all kinds of things. So he had posted this song. Is it like a new song? Is it a new dub song?
Yeah, I got that much.
Wing, wing, wing.
Yeah. But
like
only everybody can right.
Because I'm like, what kind of gun is that?
Yeah, you was like a 22 silence or like a 22 with a cut off, a sawed-off barrel 22.
Everybody on
back in this special snort, right?
Like you're going to steal a piece of meat they bought. Pressuring.
Okay.
It's nothing to do with our particular conversation.
Yeah, back to business.
Back to business. What were we talking about as grown adults?
You know, this artist thing, we get lost.
We get lost, right?
You know this game for IG, but I cut in this part particularly. I put it in IG.
We get lost. No one put our
you could expect that.
We get lost very quickly.
As I get one to like cutting off this part and like export.
I cool with whatever you do.
Yeah, man.
My last question, and I guess it's a question that people always ask is: do you see more sculptures along the particular theme? Like, I know that, well, I don't know. Like, how is your mind working now? Like, you're almost finished Unapologetic as a cont'd sculpture. Do you see other sculptures in the apologetic vein? Do you see other sculptures maybe in a COVID-19 series? Or do you think you're just going to be inspired by the next thing that happens?
Yes, I definitely be continuing to capture what I see, my view of the female experience, especially the black female experience. It's not limited to that. It's my environment. So obviously Barbados is multiracial and I interact with multiple races and I'm inspired by women in general. But yes, the focus would be black women. So that definitely will continue for sure. I don't know in what form. I am working on some pieces where I have a fascination with the energy. Remember I spoke earlier about the energy of like women exude. So I'm interested in defining that because I find different women have different energy. Well, everybody has different energy. And I'm fascinated by that, particularly with women and expressing that. So you will be seeing some work in those veins. I already have the concepts down, and as into next year, you'll definitely be seeing some work like that.
Well, we're really looking forward to it. And just one last question, I promise, because it just came to mind. How do other women respond to your sculptures? So I don't know if I'm clear. Like, what's the feedback? Like, I believe Unapologetic is beautiful. You know, I fell in love with Trapped. That's just me.
Right.
And I only have a particular energy. How has been the response? What's the response been like by other females within your circle who have seen the work, etc.?
I found that the response is always good. Some women like particular pieces better than others, but the response is always good. And a lot of the times, the person who eventually purchases the piece are women, and because they connect to the piece. Like the Love God, Aim High, Keep Pure. I found that had a really strong response from women because everybody connected with the little boy, the eager little boy, and everybody saw their child, etc., etc. And the same thing with Upon Reflection. the lady who eventually bought that, it really resonated with her. So yeah, I usually get a stronger response, thankfully. Okay, so I'd like to thank you, Oneka, for a very, encouraging, and I don't know, I really don't know how to explain it, but yeah, I would say a very, what's the word? It was a very helpful discussion, and beyond that, where when you're able to talk about your work, it helps you solidify and clarify, especially when you're doing things by intuition. So it's very, very grateful to have the discussion with you, because I'm pretty confident now going forward I have some sort of direction I can focus on. So thank you very much.
You're most welcome. That's what your accountability buddy does.
Oh yes, I know you wanted to bring in the whole accountability discussion.
I did not. I actually, on the drive to school this morning, I was listening to, I think it's Sophia Cambridge Republic Bank, and they do these tips for managing money.
Yeah.
And she was saying today that, you should get a buddy. She didn't call it an accountability buddy, but she said a buddy. You should get a buddy or people that, have similar goals, and they will help to keep you accountable. So I want to thank you also for being my accountability buddy, because over the couple of weeks that we've been working on this COVID-19 technical grants project, it has also helped to push me. So thank you.
You're most welcome.